but the guilt never really left me. My parents made sure of that. When I was 16, things took a turn for the worse. My condition deteriorated rapidly, and one day I slipped into a coma. I don't remember much from those days, but when I woke up weeks later, my grandparents were at my bedside.
Oh, thank God. We're so happy that you finally woke up.
Where are Mom and Dad?
I'm very sorry to tell you, but they left, Julie. They couldn't handle it anymore. But don't you worry, we're here, and we're not going anywhere.
They left?
Yes, sweetie. We don't know where we went wrong with your father, but he just isn't a good person. And your mom isn't much better, but thankfully, you take after us and not them.
I wanted to cry, but I was too numb. They abandoned me, my own parents? Hi there, my name is Julie, and I want to share a story about how my life changed drastically. I'll be honest, it isn't exactly a very happy story, but I can promise that it does have a somewhat happy ending. Well, maybe not happy in the traditional sense, but I'm very happy with how things turned out. For as long as I can remember, I've been sick. My immune system seemed to have it out for me, and doctors couldn't pinpoint exactly what was wrong. I spent most of my childhood in and out of hospitals, hooked up to IVs, and enduring endless tests. But the hardest part wasn't the illness itself. It was the way my parents treated me because of it. For as long as I can remember, they always saw me as a burden and made no secret that they saw me that way. Hey, Mom and Dad, can we go somewhere fun this summer?
Of course not.
But why not? Wouldn't it be fun?
Julie, you're the reason we can't take a vacation. All our money goes to your treatments.
Do you know how much easier life would be if we didn't have to worry about you? Do you know how much money we could save if it wasn't for all your medical bills? Sometimes I wonder if life would just be easier if you would just die.
I knew they were stressed, but can you imagine how painful it must be to hear your own parents say such things? I didn't choose to be born, and I definitely didn't choose to be born with all these problems. However, the guilt they placed on me felt unbearable. I tried to hide my symptoms sometimes, just so they wouldn't get angry. It never worked. Eventually, I would need to go to the hospital or the doctor, and they would make me feel like a burden every time that I had to. Thankfully, my grandparents were my safe haven. They lived a few streets over and would visit as often as they could. Grandma always had a way of making me feel like I was safe, and that things would eventually get better. She would often say that one day all of this would just be a distant memory.
Your parents are wrong, Julie. None of this is your fault. You didn't ask to be sick, and you're not holding anyone back.
One day, you're going to be stronger than all of this. We'll make sure of it.
I clung to their words, but the guilt never really left me. My parents made sure of that. When I was 16, things took a turn for the worse. My condition deteriorated rapidly, and one day I slipped into a coma. I don't remember much from those days, but when I woke up weeks later, my grandparents were at my bedside.
Oh, thank God. We're so happy that you finally woke up.
Where are Mom and Dad?
I'm very sorry to tell you, but they left, Julie. They couldn't handle it anymore. But don't you worry, we're here, and we're not going anywhere.
They left?
Yes, sweetie. We don't know where we went wrong with your father, but he just isn't a good person. And your mom isn't much better, but thankfully, you take after us and not them.
I wanted to cry, but I was too numb. They abandoned me, my own parents? For a while, I couldn't process it, but my grandparents were true to their word. They stayed by my side and cared for me like I was their own child. In fact, they treated me so well that I almost forgot about my parents entirely. They were just such amazing people, and I began to understand what my grandma had told me. My parents were not good people, and it was a blessing in disguise to no longer have them in my life. A few years later, something extraordinary happened. My grandparents would buy lottery tickets every week, but one day, my grandfather came home laughing and dancing around, and he told us that he had won the lottery. Not a small amount, enough to change our lives forever. With their newfound wealth, they sought out the best doctors in the world to figure out what was wrong with me. And finally, after years of pain and suffering, we finally got answers. A team of specialists diagnosed me with a rare autoimmune disorder and developed a treatment plan that actually worked. For the first time in my life, I started to get better. I had thought for the longest time that I was cursed to be sick my entire life, so that when I started to feel better, I doubted that it would last. But it did.
See, I told you that you would get better one day. You're stronger than all of this.
What's next, kiddo? What's the big dream? Just name it, and we'll help you make it a reality.
I honestly never imagined that I would have the chance. I really thought I would be sick for my entire life, but now that I actually have a future to look forward to, I feel overwhelmed.
We are so happy that you get to feel this way. Those doctors are miracle workers, but surely there must be a dream that you have.
It's silly, but there is one. I want to go to culinary school. I've always dreamed of becoming a pastry chef.
That isn't silly at all. If that's your dream, then let's make it a reality.
And that's exactly what I did. With their support, I enrolled in one of the best culinary programs in the country. School wasn't easy and the hours were long and difficult, but I worked hard and even managed to graduate with honors. Afterwards, I looked around for the perfect location, and once I found what I was searching for, my grandparents helped me to open my own bakery. I knew how to play the social media game well, and I advertised like crazy, and within a few months it became a huge success. Life was finally everything I'd ever dreamed of. But life has a way of throwing curveballs. My grandparents' health began to decline, and I put everything on hold to take care of them. They'd given me so much, and now it was my turn to give back. They tried to get me to focus on my own life, but I could never do that to them. After all they had sacrificed for me, I knew that I wanted and needed to do everything I could to help them. Then one day, out of nowhere, my parents reappeared. They claimed they wanted to reconnect, but I wasn't buying it. It didn't take long to figure out their real motive. When they had left, I found out that they had started up their own business, but it had failed, and they were drowning in debt. Worse, they owed money to some dangerous people. I only found out when I asked my mother how they had gotten the loan to start up their own business. They had approached a crime boss for the starting capital. She told me, but I knew that she only did so because she needed me to understand how much they needed help, and that she wanted me to feel sympathy for her and my dad.
Julie, we're desperate. If you don't help us, we're in serious trouble.
You have the money, and when your grandparents pass, you'll inherit even more. You can afford to help us.
Are you serious? You abandoned me when I needed you most, and now you come crawling back for money?
We're not giving you a cent. You made your choices. Now you need to deal with the consequences. You two have a lot of nerve demanding your daughter and parents help you after what you did, and the way you treated us.
Things escalated quickly. My parents became more desperate, more manipulative. One night, I went over to their house to talk with them. They kept begging me to see reason and help them, and to promise that I would give them my inheritance once my grandparents passed away. It was so infuriating, and I wanted them to just leave me alone. While there, I got suspicious of them as they kept saying that soon my grandparents would be dead and I would have more money than I knew what to do with it. I ended up excusing myself, and I pretended to go to the bathroom. Once I was out of their line of sight, I snuck into their office and looked at their emails on their computer. I wasn't sure what I was really looking for, but I found evidence that they were planning to poison my grandparents to get their hands on the inheritance faster. I couldn't believe it. They were sending emails back and forth with someone that they were trying to hire to kill my grandparents. I acted fast and called the police. I wasn't sure if I had enough evidence, but the mere presence of the police made my parents terrified. Once they arrived, they began to investigate and turned everything over and revealed enough evidence to arrest my parents. My mom somehow managed to flee and snuck away while the police were conducting their investigation, but my dad wasn't so lucky. He was convicted and sent to prison. There was more than enough evidence to send him to prison for a decade. Unfortunately for him, he would not end up serving his whole term though, but more on that in a second. I thought that would be the end of it. I figured that my parents were out of my life. With my dad in prison and my mom in the wind, I figured I could return to my life. Sadly, it wasn't. A few months later, I was approached by some men who worked for the crime boss my parents owed money to.
We don't want anything from you. We just want to know where your parents are.
My dad's in prison. As for my mom, she'll come out of hiding eventually. Probably when my grandparents pass, thinking she'll get something.
That isn't good enough.
So long as you promise that you leave my grandparents and I out things. I may have an idea. That's when I told them about a way I might lure my mom out of hiding. They listened and agreed to my request, so long as the idea worked. I posted a fake obituary for my grandparents in the local paper saying that they had passed away suddenly. Sure enough, my mom showed up at my bakery a few days later demanding to know when the will would be read.
Julie, I'm so sorry. I know it must hurt, but they are in a better place, and soon enough we'll be doing well once they read the will.
Save it. I have no interest in anything you have to say. I excused myself, went to the back room, and made a quick call to the men who had visited me. Within a few minutes of my ignoring her, my mother left the store in a huff. I never saw her again. Later, I heard that my father had been killed in prison, likely on orders from the crime boss. I should have felt guilty, but I didn't. They'd made their choices, and I'd made mine. I can only assume that my mother either fled again and is still on the run, or that the men I notified found her, and that they killed her as well. Either way, I was finally able to move on with my life. My grandparents eventually recovered, and we spent the next several years together, cherishing every moment. They'd always told me I was stronger than my circumstances, and now I finally believed them. Thank you for never giving up on me.
Family sticks together, kiddo.
And that's exactly what we did. Thanks for watching. Oh my God, Erica. How long has this been going on?
For months, he's kissed me, Helen. He's hugged me in ways that don't feel right. Some nights he will come to my room and forcefully touch me. I've told him to stop, but he won't. Instead, he said that if I ever tell anyone, he will kill me. I am scared.
Rage boiled inside me. Hi, my name is Helen, and I wanted to share my life story with you. I will admit, though, that it isn't the most uplifting story, but I'm hoping that anyone that needs to hear it will do so, and find it inspiring for them. You see, my story is about cutting toxic people out of your life, and I know that sometimes people have a hard time doing so maybe hearing about what I went through will give you the courage you need. At any rate, when I was 6 years old, my mother got very ill and she died. The details of what lead up to her death are blurry to me now, more a shadow of sadness than a sharp memory. What I do remember is the emptiness that filled our house afterward, and my father, David, struggling to adapt to a world without her. He became an odd, distant figure in my life. Not cruel, not neglectful, just absent in all the ways that mattered. Of course, leading up to that, we hadn't exactly been all that close. We didn't really have a lot of overlapping interests. My father loved sports and war novels, while I loved board games and fantasy stories. Our worlds barely intersected, and when they did, it was awkward and forced. We ate dinner together. It was usually in front of the television so that we wouldn't have to talk, and the few times when we did talk, it was usually just surface-level stuff. I did try to include him in my hobbies, but he never seemed interested. Dad, do you want to play this game with me? It's called Mystic Quest. It's about adventurers battling mythical creatures.
Not really my thing, Helen. Why don't you play it with one of your friends?
Sorry. I just thought maybe it could be something we could try to do together.
Yeah. No thanks, kiddo. I'd rather watch paint dry. This is really something more for kids. Like I said, just find one of your friends to play with.
Friends weren't easy to come by, but I didn't tell him that. Instead, I watched him retreat to his armchair with another Tom Clancy novel in hand. Our conversations were sparse, our interactions minimal. I grew up in that quiet disconnection, longing for a bond that never formed. Everything changed when Bethany entered the picture. I was 16 when they met. She was warm, friendly, and brought a light into the house that I hadn't realized was missing. I know some people would feel threatened by their parent dating out of nowhere, but I found it to be a relief since there was finally other people to interact with. Plus, Bethany had a daughter, Erica, who was 2 years younger than me. Erica was sweet and shy, but we got along well enough. At first, I was hopeful. Maybe this new family dynamic would bring us closer. I was wrong. Erica and my dad hit it off instantly. She loved football and could discuss statistics and players as if she'd been following the game her entire life. She even liked his favorite war novels. I'd walk into the living room and see them laughing together, their bond forming effortlessly. It stung, but I told myself to be patient. Maybe he'd still make time for me. Hey Dad, can we go to the bookstore this weekend? There's a new fantasy series I want to check out.
Not this weekend, Helen. Erica and I are going to the big game. Maybe another time.
Maybe another time became his mantra. Meanwhile, he bought Erica tickets to concerts, jerseys signed by her favorite players, and once, a limited edition box set of her favorite war novels. When I asked for something, he'd remind me that I was old enough to start earning my own money. He even suggested that I needed to get a job because I was home far too much. One evening, he came home with a new bike, a sleek, shiny model that practically screamed expensive. Wow, Dad, is that for me?
No, it's for Erica. She's been wanting one for ages.
But so have I. Dad, it's really starting to feel like you love her more than me.
What do you mean? Oh, Helen, don't be so jealous and paranoid. The reality is that Erica hasn't had a father figure for a long time, and I'm just trying to be a good male role model for her. Someone she can compare her future husband to.
I had to stifle a laugh since my father thought that Erica could use a good male role model, while I had never had one in my entire life. I didn't know if he was being cruel on purpose or if it was all just by accident, but it stung. The sad thing was that Erica didn't even ride bikes that often. So as a gift, it didn't make much sense. And as for me, I couldn't remember the last time I'd gotten a gift at all. Obviously, I would get them for Christmas and my birthday, but even then, it was usually something practical, like school supplies. Then came the soccer game fiasco. Erica's school team made it to the finals, and Dad went all out. Custom jerseys, banners, and even a celebratory dinner planned afterward. I had asked him months earlier to come to a school board game club event where I'd been chosen as a finalist in a local competition. He'd brushed it off, saying he'd try but probably wouldn't make it. Of course, he didn't. Dad, you didn't come to my event, but you're spending all this time and money on Erica's game? It doesn't seem fair.
Helen, it's a championship game. It's a big deal. Besides, you don't need me cheering you on for board games.
Mine was a championship too, Dad. I swear, you are so inconsiderate. It's like you hate me or something.
Stop being so selfish, Helen. Of course I don't hate you. I love you and I love Erica too. It's just different with Erica.
What do you mean? Different how?
Well, never mind. Just drop it.
His responses were of course weird, but he was always being weird, so it was hard to tell if this behavior was really all that new. But yeah, it was another blow to our relationship. When I mentioned it to Bethany, she frowned and promised to talk to him, but nothing came of it. The worst moment came one evening when we went out to dinner. Bethany suggested a nice Italian place, and we all sat down to eat.
Erica, get whatever you want. It's on me.
What about me?
You've got your own money, Helen. You're self-sufficient.
I paid for my meal in silence, my appetite gone. Bethany noticed the tension and tried to smooth things over later.
David, I really appreciate you making things so accommodating for Erica, but don't you think you're being a little unfair to Helen? She's your daughter too.
Bethany, stay out of it. Helen's always been independent. She doesn't need me hovering over her.
But she does need you to be an attentive father. I really think you're pushing her away.
Well, she is my daughter. Just mind your own damn business about it. Drop it.
That argument escalated and ended in shouting, and nothing changed. The distance between us grew, and I started resenting Erica, even though I knew it wasn't her fault. She didn't ask for his favoritism. One day, Dad organized a weekend camping trip, just him and Erica. When I asked if I could join, he told me it was their thing. So I stayed home, reading alone in my room, the ache of being left out becoming almost unbearable. Each night I fell asleep crying and sobbing. Then, one day, Erica knocked on my bedroom door, her face pale and streaked with tears.
Can I talk to you?
What's wrong? She handed me her phone, her hands trembling. On the screen were texts from my father, explicit messages, promises of love, vows to leave Bethany and marry Erica when she turned 18. My stomach turned as I scrolled through them. Suddenly, my father's odd behaviors made complete sense, and it made me feel sick. Both because it was unquestionably evil of him, but also because I had resented this poor girl, and meanwhile she was suffering and going through something awful. I felt so guilty. Oh my God, Erica. How long has this been going on?
For months he's kissed me, Helen. He's hugged me in ways that don't feel right. Some nights he will come to my room and forcefully touch me. I've told him to stop, but he won't. Instead, he said that if I ever tell anyone, he will kill me. I am scared.
Rage boiled inside me. I grabbed her hand and marched downstairs to find Bethany. Together, we showed her the messages and told her everything.
I'm so sorry, Erica. I had no idea, but we're going to fix this.
That night, we confronted him. Bethany stood firm, her voice shaking with fury. I had to give it to her. The way she stood up to my father was inspiring.
David, we know everything. The texts, the letters, the way you've been treating Erica. It ends tonight. If you walk away and leave us alone, we won't press charges. But if you don't, we're calling the police.
You're all jealous, bitter bitches. You're trying to ruin my life because you can't stand that I love Erica. But we're soulmates, and we're meant to be together.
No, we're not. I don't want anything to do with you.
And now you two morons have brainwashed her.
He flew into a rage, throwing things across the room. When he lunged for Erica in an attempt to grab her and run, Bethany and I stopped him by throwing ourselves between her and him. We then began to punch him and knocked him unconscious. We then tied him up before calling the police. It was just awful. The aftermath was chaotic. David was arrested and later sentenced to 7 years in prison for assault, child abuse, grooming, and attempted kidnapping. From what I heard, he wasn't having an easy time in prison. Inmates don't take kindly to pedophiles after all. Of course, not long after he was sent off to prison, Bethany filed for divorce and even filed for full custody of me. And thankfully, the judge saw that it was prudent to not only award her the house and all the family assets, but he agreed that Bethany should have full custody of me and Erica. At first, I thought it would be awkward, but it ended up being the best thing in the world for me. With my father gone, I was finally able to spend more time with Erica and Bethany, and we really started to bond. We explored each other's interests and supported one another. It was the first time in my entire life that I finally felt like I was a part of a real family, and I loved it. My father would send me letters from time to time, apologizing and telling me that he had been beaten and stabbed several times. He said he was now scared to socialize in prison. I often replied with a single sentence, "Serves you right," followed by a laughing emoji. As far as I was concerned, he had died the day he was sent to prison, and he was no longer family. I had found myself a new family, and I would never let him back in my life ever again. Thanks for watching.
Why didn't you die in my stomach? Huh? I hate you so much. I don't want to keep on seeing you. If you do...
You see, that is my biological mother. Let me share my story. Hi, my name's Cherry Wilson. I'm 26 years old and live with my adoptive parents. They're the best things that ever happened to me, alongside my brothers. My real parents abandoned me 20 years ago, when I was only 6. Then I did expect to be abandoned. They'd threatened me with it countless times. My biological parents are people who don't believe that having female children was good. I was born after 2 years of their arranged marriage. My biological father's father was a wealthy man, same with my mom's father. They were both only children and already roped for marriage. To secure a partnership with them, they'd proposed marriage to their kids. Since they had no choice but to agree, they got married. Their parents wanted the house to be filled with male children. Both were demanding for a male, and my parents needed a son too. They believed a boy would make them proud. However, my birth shattered their hearts. Once, when I was 5 years of age, I overheard them arguing, and I was the center of it.
Well, I'm tired too. I never wanted a girl. I regret having her just as much as you do.
Then agree to my suggestion. We should put her up for adoption and pray for a boy.
We can't do that. People are going to talk. They'll tag us as the couple who couldn't birth a boy and ended up putting their daughter up for adoption.
Ah, I hate this. Where's that stupid child? Where the hell is she? Cherry.
Innocently, I walked up to her. My mother landed a resounding slap across my face.
Why didn't you die in my stomach, huh? I hate you so much. I don't want to keep on seeing you.
I was a smart child, so I understood what she meant. It wasn't the first time. I think I would have still understood because those words were like an anthem. Whenever she spoke to me like that, I couldn't help my tears. A month later, my mom fell pregnant. I got even worse treatment from them, as they strongly believed it would be a boy. The universe frowned upon me when the child was born, as he ended up being a boy. My little self panicked so much when my dad received the news through a phone call.
Get ready to leave our house. My wife has brought our real child to life.
Those words killed the child in me. I was left alone in the big house. The maids also regarded me as trash, so they barely paid attention to me. 2 days later, my mom returned home with the new baby. I tried to follow them in, but I was pushed roughly by my father.
Where do you think you're going? To touch my child? You're nothing to us. He's our only child, moron.
I was so young to be treated in that manner, but they didn't care. That night, together, they took me out of the house and threw me into the streets.
Leave our lives and never show your face.
I wish you would get kidnapped or killed, fool.
I was just a child. I cried and begged, but they turned a deaf ear to me. When I grabbed my dad's legs, he pushed off roughly, causing me to hit my head on the floor. I passed out immediately. I woke up hours later in a strange room with a strange lady there. I couldn't speak. The lady lifted me up and fed me. I had bandages around my head and arm. After eating, I had the strength to speak. I asked who the lady was and where I was, and she explained that she found me unconscious, on her way back from work. She worked at an adoption agency and had no choice but to bring me there. Another lady also came into the room. They made me feel comfortable, and when I was better, they took me to join the other children. They did try to reach my biological parents, but they gave their full permission for me to be adopted. According to what I eavesdropped from the conversation, they told the workers that I was bad luck, and they didn't need me. It was a sad period for me. I was barely 7 years old, but my little brain could already understand a lot. The workers helped me as well, to forget it all and begin life afresh. By the time I was 7, my adoptive parents adopted me. They were the sweetest. It was hard for me to loosen up with parents again, as I suffered from the trauma of my real parents' behaviors, but they worked hard in getting me to see how much they loved me. My real parents never sent me to school, but my adoptive parents did. Even more, it was an expensive school. Their whole family never made me feel like I was adopted. Everyone loved me. However, 4 years later, at age 11, my adoptive parents had their first real child. It turned out to be a boy. When I heard the news from my grandmother, I went into a deep state of panic. I was used to being loved by them, so the news of them having a son of their own brought in a rush of emotions. I wasn't happy because I thought my time in their lives had ended. My real parents abandoned me after they had a son, and I thought they would do the same. My grandmother understood my fear and immediately began to comfort me. She assured me that I was part of the family and they would never let go of me for anything. It was hard to get me calm, but it eventually happened. On getting to the hospital, I broke down again, but my adoptive dad was there for me. They told me I was their first child and first daughter, and having a son would never change that.
We love you, Cherry. Do not be scared. We will never abandon you.
My adoptive mom also comforted me. I held my new brother in my hands, and I became even calmer. Life was good with a new member in the family. My family ensured to show us equal love. I also showered my brother with love. Our family got even happier. At age 16, in my final year in high school, my parents had another son. This time, I was even happier than them. I was overjoyed to have another member added to the family. I took care of the baby like he was my own son. The memories I was making with them covered the sad ones from my real parents. I barely even remembered them. I was in a better place. For my high school graduation, my parents got me a car. I couldn't believe my eyes.
This is to show you how much we love and appreciate your presence in our lives, Cherry.
Thank you for making things easy and even better for us. We love you, baby.
I burst into tears. My parents pulled me into a hug, whispering comforting words to me. My friends congratulated me. I was happy. I took exams for college and passed. My dad had started a chocolate company, so I went into business school to assist in handling it. My parents were proud of my decision.
I'd wanted to ask you, but I wanted you too to choose what you want.
You're so thoughtful, baby. Your dad and I are proud of you and grateful for you.
I was glad to have made that decision. I spent 5 years in business school. By the time I finished, my dad's company had grown even more. I began working immediately as the vice president. My younger brother was almost done with high school and had told me he was also going to join the business. I began to train him immediately. My other brother aspired to become a medical doctor, so he cared less about the business. Life was going smoothly for our family. 2 years into being a vice president, we opened a different branch, and my dad handed its management to me. I was immensely grateful and worked hard to make him proud. And I did. In just 1 year, my dad's products were the highest-selling chocolate. One day, I got a private call from an unknown number. I was hesitant to answer the call. However, when the caller persisted, I was forced to answer. Hello? Cherry on the line. How may I help you?
Cherry, my daughter. It's your mom, darling.
I was confused. Why would my mom call me with an unknown number? Also, her voice sounded different and strangely familiar. I knew that caller wasn't my adoptive mom. There was only one other mother I had, my biological mother. I was furious. How dare you call me your child? Have you no shame? Why the hell did you call me? How on earth did you even get my private number?
It doesn't matter, Cherry. I need your help. Your father died 6 years ago, and his family sent your brother and me out. My family took me in, but they sent me out last year because their company went bankrupt. We can barely feed, Cherry. Your brother doesn't even go to college anymore, and no one is willing to employ a dropout. Help us, Cherry.
Her audacity was shocking. I couldn't believe how shameless she was. After destroying my childhood, how did she get the courage to call me again? I ended the call without saying a word, as I knew I would say a lot of hurtful things to her if I spoke. She continued calling nonstop, but I refused to pick. During dinner with my family, her calls still kept coming in.
Pick up your call, baby. Why are you ignoring it?
I was hesitant to tell her the truth of who it was, but I eventually did. I don't know how she got my number, but isn't she so shameless?
Answer her, darling. Help her out this once. You're good, unlike her.
It took 3 days, but they finally managed to convince me. I finally answered the call. I got her bank details and wired a large sum of money to her. Don't ever call me again. I don't want to have anything to do with you. I thought it would end there, but a month later, she called again.
I gave birth to you. You can't just abandon me. Send us more money. Your brother's school took more than half of the one you sent.
Send us some money, Cherry. I'm a man, and I'm going to be better than you in the future. I might remember to help you then.
That was it for me. I lashed out at them very disrespectfully and told them to never call me again. However, they didn't stop until I was forced to abandon the phone. A week later, they showed up at the company. She caused so much trouble, telling everyone that my adoptive parents kidnapped her child. I couldn't tolerate her behavior. I contacted the cops immediately. They were both arrested. I sued them for harassment and also defaming my adoptive mother by calling her a kidnapper. The court asked if I would accept a fine, and I agreed. My mother was fined with $8,000 instead of serving a 2-year jail term, and my brother was fined $5,000 for being an accomplice. I was satisfied, as I knew they would find it hard to pay back. The court gave them a period of 3 months to pay, or they'd both serve 3 years each with hard labor. My adoptive parents supported me, as they weren't in support of my mother's actions. Of course, my mother and brother weren't able to pay up after 3 months, so they borrowed from a biker gang to pay. I hear they are now on the run, as the biker gang is, after their lives, because they owe them a huge amount, so they change states every time and are depressed. It isn't enough punishment for their actions, but I was satisfied. It would have been even better if my father was alive to get his punishment. I learned he died after a fatal and gory accident. I guess the universe gave him his punishment. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
He said you'd be mad at us for not following their orders.
And they don't feed us. We have to make food for them first and clean up after them.
And if we get too loud, they make us sit in the kitchen pantry with the light off.
I found out that they were also looking through my bedroom, that they made the girls their little servants, making them get and do everything for them. And then the worst stuff, they made them dress up in silly outfits and made them dance to their own amusement, mocking them and filming them. I was raised in a single-parent home. where my loving father took care of us as best he could after our mother died at a young age. Being the oldest of 3, I helped out as much as I could. I made lunches, helped with dinner, and babysat long hours, while our father was at work day in and day out. My father made all of our lives as best as he could, but it wasn't always easy. Sometimes we'd have to eat the same food for days on end because it was so cheap to buy. We only bought used clothes, and we never went out. As the years went on, our father became more successful and was able to afford better stuff. Our youngest brother, Max, remembers the good times but doesn't remember the hardships we went through because he was too little to remember.
Are we going to have pizza tonight?
We already had pizza last night. Let's do something a little bit more healthy.
But I want pizza. Son, listen to your sister. We already had pizza. How about we have a healthy dinner and we can have ice cream for dessert? Well, okay, I guess, but it better be chocolate.
Our father just wanted us all to be happy, and he did a great job at that. He sadly passed away before he could retire, but not before giving me and my sister a good head on our shoulders. We took money and education seriously. Max wasn't a terrible student, but he only made just passing grades, and he always spent what money he got right away, even when he became an adult.
Let's go to the movies, guys.
I am sorry, Max, but me and Pete need to save for the kids. We can watch something online at our place and order some pizza if you want.
That sounds lame. I'll just head to the club. That sounds more fun anyway. See ya.
I thought we would have instilled some family and money values into Max, but I think he always accepted that he could get whatever he wanted, never realizing the actual costs. We drifted apart, and years went by, and we barely communicated with one another. After 2 girls, Carrie and Lizzie, 10 and 11, and owning my own house, I got an unexpected call from him.
Hey sis, I know this is out of the blue, but do you think me and my wife can stay at your place for a quick visit?
You got married? I was in shock. Max never told me about his personal life, really, but this was still a complete surprise.
Yeah, it's me, Stacy, and her sister Maddie. I know it's sort of last minute, but I told them you'd be cool with us coming over. Say next week?
Yeah, anything for family, I'll let Pete know. Happy to see you soon. The next few days were a blur of cleaning and getting things ready for our unexpected guests. When they came, everything seemed okay at first. We all got along just fine overall. So how long are you all going to be in the area? We love seeing you all.
That's the thing. We might be here longer than we thought. You see, we're moving to this area, and we're hoping to look for a new place while we stayed here. 2, maybe 3 weeks tops. You'll hardly notice we're here. Promise.
It took a little convincing, but Pete was willing to accommodate them. We already had 1 spare room, and moving both girls into a single room opened another room for Maddie. But by the 2nd day, things quickly changed. Max always wanted to go out to eat, but wanted to split the bill evenly, even when he, Stacy, and Maddie ordered the most expensive items and drinks.
Come on, Jane. You're my older sister, and I know Pete makes lots of money. Help us out here. It's embarrassing.
If money was such a big issue for you, why did you 3 keep ordering the most expensive stuff?
You could have ordered expensive stuff too, you know? No one made you order the cheap food.
Besides, didn't you guys invite us 3 to this specific restaurant? Why bring us here if you didn't want us to try new things?
Yes, but what Jane is trying to say is that you could have tried something new and moderately priced. This is just like old Jane. Fine, whatever. We'll pay for ourselves. But we are not leaving a tip. The service was terrible anyway.
That was only the tip of the iceberg. Later that night, Max, Stacy, and Maddie drank our liquor after we went to bed. We had a few expensive bottles that we were saving for special occasions. They didn't clean up after themselves. There was throw up on the carpet near the couch. They woke up the girls and Pete and me in the middle of the night. Pete had to tell them to be quiet. The next morning was rough.
Oh, come on. Why buy expensive liquor when you're not going to enjoy it? We can get you some that tastes just as good for a fraction of the cost. Besides, it tasted about the same as other whiskey with Coke.
That wasn't cheap whiskey. You're not even supposed to mix it with Coke. You woke up the girls, you left a mess, including puke by the couch. You got mad at Pete for telling you guys to quiet down, and you have yet to apologize for any of it.
Is your sister always like this in the morning? Because I am starting to feel unwelcome here. I thought we were family.
Jane, look. I am so sorry. We will try not to make that much noise at night anymore, okay? But I think it's unfair. You want your guests to clean up this house. Get one of your kids to clean it up. It'll be a good learning experience for them.
I will not have my girls cleaning up drunken puke.
Fine. Maddie did it. When she wakes up, I'll make her clean it. Happy?
After that, things weren't as bad for a few days. Max, Stacy, and Maddie mostly stayed to themselves. They didn't clean up after themselves, but thankfully they didn't make as big a mess as their night of partying. During the day, they would be out and about, looking at places to rent. Did you find a place yet?
Not yet. We keep looking. But all the good places get taken too quickly, you know?
Yeah, it's not a good market for buyers at the moment. That reminds me, Pete has to be out of town for business. I'll be here, of course. But I do need to work a few swing shifts. Would either of you be willing to watch the girls for a few hours after school this week? They're old enough. You really don't have to do much. Just feed them and make sure they don't hurt themselves.
I guess we can. They seem quiet enough.
Thanks, Max. I appreciate it. Even though I knew Max wasn't that dependable, my girls were old enough to mostly watch themselves. I just wanted someone to make sure they were home and safe. Boy, was I wrong. The first day or two seemed normal enough. I would come home late, and the girls would already be getting ready for bed. They didn't really want to talk, but they were at that age where kids wanted to distance themselves from their parents, so that didn't seem too odd to me. But by the end of the 5 days, they were not the same two happy, hyper children I remember. They seemed tired and sad. Lizzie, is everything okay? Is Uncle Max and Aunt Stacy being good to you and your sister?
Yeah, kinda.
Mom, they're not nice.
Shh, Carrie. We'll get in trouble.
Who will get in trouble? And by who?
Uncle Max said we'd get in big trouble.
In big trouble for what?
He said you'd be mad at us for not following their orders.
And they don't feed us. We have to make food for them first and clean up after them.
And if we get too loud, they make us sit in the kitchen pantry with the light off.
I found out that they were also looking through my bedroom. That they made the girls their little servants, making them get and do everything for them. And then the worst stuff, they made them dress up in silly outfits and made them dance to their own amusement, mocking them and filming them. Tears filled their eyes as they told me all this, and my heart broke for them.
And when we tried to refuse and the pantry didn't work, they spanked us.
It was at that point I was livid. After giving my girls hugs and telling them everything was going to be okay, I wanted nothing more than to yell at my brother and kick him out. But something Carrie said stuck with me. They were filmed. The next day I went out and bought lots of liquor. I had the kids go stay with some friends for the night, and I told Max that for watching the kids, we would have a little party with lots of drinks.
See, now this is the cool sister I always wanted.
They drank, and I only had water. As the night went on, they got really drunk and were whooping and hollering and dancing. Finally, they started to pass out, and on the cusp of falling asleep, I made my move. I grabbed each of their phones, and one by one, hey, you wanted to show me something on your phone, what's the passcode? And without fail, each of them unlocked their phone for me. Now it was my turn to invade their privacy. I found the videos they took of my girls being made to dance, and where they got spanked, I sent those to my own device. It looked like Max was also stealing money from Stacy's parents. With Maddie's help, they had lots of text going back and forth on their little scheme. And Max had his boss's contact information, which he was on vacation from. The next morning, I made a few calls before they woke up. The police arrived to arrest them for the videos they took showing what they did to the girls. Surprised at this development and deeply hungover, they started fighting the cops. As they realized why they were being detained, they started pointing fingers at who was the ringleader. At first, Stacy took Max's side, but that quickly changed as I told her about his scam against her parents with Maddie's help, and that I sent her their texts as proof. In the end, they were both locked up for a year and some months. Next, once I got the police report, I sent that information to Max's job, whereby he was fired immediately. Years later, when they were out and the dust had settled, I heard from my sister that Max tried to get her to help him. He was poor and unable to get a job in his field again. He had become depressed and homeless and only recently got hired at a factory barely making ends meet. I know for sure how frustrated he is doing that job. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe and leave a comment down below saying I subscribed, and we will try our best to reply to your comment.
Well, it's Trevor's illness. It's back again. We need money for another treatment for him.
Why not use his college fund? It's clear that he won't need it now.
We did. After you left, we were forced to start working multiple jobs, and even with his college fund, we barely are able to make enough to pay all of our bills.
And how is that my problem? Because we're family and we really need you. Well, that's just it. You may need me, but I 100% do not need any of you. If you don't help us, we will disown you. And just like that, I turned and left. Hi there, my name is Kevin, and I may have done something a bit greedy and wrong, but the tragedy is that I don't even care. Let me explain what I mean, and then you can tell me if what I did was justified. You'll probably not agree that it was the right thing to do, but maybe you will agree that I had a good reason to do it. So my story starts back when I was a young boy. My older brother Trevor was a bit of a rotten kid. He would constantly get into fights at school and get awful grades, but our parents constantly just made excuses for him. Yeah, he stole from the grocery store, but boys will be boys. I'm sure he feels sorry for it. It didn't matter how much trouble he got into. My parents just thought that Trevor was the best kid in existence, even when he broke our neighbor's son's arm. They just made excuses for him and brushed it off.
Listen, my Trevor is a good boy. He would never attack someone unless they provoked him. Your son must have said or done something to deserve what happened to him.
It was so infuriating. They would treat him like everything that he did was right and that there was nothing that he could do that they would be upset with. Even when he stole their car when he was only 13, they still only made him promise not to do it again. And then 1 month later, when he did only this time, he crashed the car into several of our neighbors' cars. For the first time in Trevor's life, our parents yelled at him and they promised that he would pay for all the damage that he had done. However, the second they got him home, they apologized for their harsh words and didn't even ground him. They even lied to the neighbors and told them that he had paid for the damages even though they had eaten the bill themselves. It all changed, though, when Trevor got sick. At first, the doctors couldn't figure out what was causing his illness, but he was always tired and nauseous. It was so bad that even walking up a single flight of stairs was too much for him, and he could barely keep anything down. He began to lose a lot of weight, and he looked terrible. But suddenly, the doctors found a cure, but there was a catch. It would cost a lot of money, but my parents happily paid, and within a few months, Trevor was feeling like himself again. He even began to torment me again. Part of me was happy that he was doing better, but I really wished that he had used the experience to become a better person. Instead, it only made him feel even more untouchable. He even began stealing my things, like my iPad or my video games. Our parents always just told us to figure things out and that I needed to just let him be. After all, he had narrowly avoided death and that he just needed some space to figure things out. I was just so done with all their excuses. A couple years later, though, is when I really began to understand how toxic my family was, though. After seeing how much my brother had suffered, I had decided that I wanted to become a therapist. Part of me was fascinated how Trevor always managed to avoid accountability, and I wanted to help other people grow up to not be like him. At any rate, I told my parents my idea. So, I have decided that I will be a therapist when I grow up. I know that it's expensive, but I'll be able to help lots of people. And I know that you've been saving money for Trevor and I to go to school, so that will help out a lot. Well, you see, the thing is, we had to spend the money that we had been saving for your school on the procedure to save Trevor's life. Wait a minute, what?
Yeah, it was really expensive.
Well, I guess it was for a good reason. But when were you going to tell Trevor and I that we had no college funds? Oh, Trevor still has one. We only spent yours on his treatment. I could not believe what I was hearing. You spent mine, but not Trevor's.
Well, yeah, he has such amazing potential.
And what about me? Honestly, we just figured that you would end up working some dead-end minimum wage job, whereas Trevor is going to be somebody important one day. This is nonsense. Why can't you just split Trevor's college fund in two and we can share it? It will at least make college a lot more affordable.
Sorry, Kevin, but we can't do that to Trevor. That would be incredibly unfair to him.
Unfair to him? How is that not unfair to me? You basically stole my money, and you didn't even have the courage to tell me. I knew that it was useless to say anything else, and so I stormed off to my room and I started making plans for how I was going to still afford school. I had the grades, but paying for it was going to be a challenge. After making a budge, I got myself 2 part-time jobs, and I started working every shift that I could. It took a while, but I saved up enough that my first 2 years of school were paid for, and I applied and was accepted. I didn't even tell my parents that I was leaving for school. I merely packed up all my belongings and put most of my things in a storage locker while I brought what I needed to school. I wasn't the least bit surprised when they didn't contact me and ask where I was, or even if I was okay, which only made me realize that they were truly awful people and that I was better off without them in my life. It took quite a few years, but I graduated, and although I worked a lot of hours, I still ended up with a good chunk of student loans. But once I started working in my field, it was all worth it. Not to mention that I was making good money, and it wouldn't take too long for me to pay off my loans. Not long after I opened my own practice, did I get a call from my parents. How they had found I couldn't say, but they wanted to know if I could come over for dinner one night. Part of me was skeptical and more than a little suspicious about the whole thing, but considering how much I had accomplished and the years that had passed, I figured that it was time to at least see if we could mend the broken relationship that had grown from when I was younger. The night that I went over, my parents greeted me at the door. They looked terrible. Their eyes were sunken and they looked like they were ready to fall asleep at any second. Once they let me inside, Trevor greeted me next. He was sitting in a wheelchair and he also looked very sickly and weak. Hey Kevin, so we heard that you were doing really well, that you have your own practice even. Yeah, it took a lot of effort, but yes, I am doing well.
That's wonderful. We're very proud of you.
I would be lying if that didn't feel really good to hear. I had a feeling that there was an ulterior motive for asking me over, but for a brief moment, I was just happy that my family was proud of me. It didn't take long for them to ruin it though. So since you are doing so well, we were wondering if you could help us out. Okay, here it comes. What is it?
Well, it's Trevor's illness. It's back again. We need money for another treatment for him.
Why not use his college fund? It's clear that he won't need it now.
We did. After you left, we were forced to start working multiple jobs, and even with his college fund, we barely are able to make enough to pay all of our bills.
And how is that my problem? Because we're family and we really need you. Well, that's just it. You may need me, but I 100% do not need any of you. If you don't help us, we will disown you. And just like that, I turned and left. It was no use in staying. Nothing had changed after all. As it turned out, they had indeed been forced to work crazy hours and use Trevor's college fund to pay for another round of treatment. After he had felt well again, he went for another joyride and had stolen a car and totaled it. The legal fees and fines were massive, and our parents once again paid for everything. Then when his illness returned yet again, they had to struggle to pay for his treatment. My parents ended up selling one of their cars and much of their belongings. Now they were desperate. They had nothing left to give up to cover the expense, and so they had turned to me. However, there was no way that I was going to give them a dime. After years of being treated like a burden to them, I had finally found a place in this world for me, and they wanted to take that away and help Trevor, who constantly just proved himself to be a menace to the world. After that day, my parents kept calling me constantly to beg for the money until I blocked their numbers. I had no interest in helping them, but as it turned out, they resorted to begging the community for the money and started a GoFundMe. It raised more than enough money for the treatment, and Trevor was once again healed. With the extra money, Trevor used it to buy drugs and prostitutes, and while he was celebrating, he drove our parents' car drunk and crashed it into a police cruiser and was then arrested. He is currently in prison and is serving a 10-year term, but something tells me that his illness will return, and he will no doubt either die in prison or he might be let out because of it. Either way, I doubt that the community will come to his rescue the next time that his illness returns. And honestly, I say good riddance. So there you have it. Do you think my denying my family was greedy, but at the very least that it was justified? Was I wrong not to help them out, even with knowing that by doing so, that I'm only enabling Trevor to continue to be a horrible person? Please let me know what you think in the comment section.